The more I think about it, man, I'm starting to think China deployed biological warfare on the US. I mean, what if China was like, fuck it, I'm gonna send like 10,000, 30,000 Chinese to America with this fucking Canova virus and just cause America to go into a big panic. I saw this news conference. It had Mike Pompeo, Trump, and the vice president. Mike Pompeo came out and said this is the Chinese virus. He says the Chinese virus, and China was like, "Hey, y'all keep on saying that shit. We're going to cut off producing medical supplies for America because China produces 80% of America's I think like medicine, antibiotics or some shit." But they had a news conference where Trump was basically talking about how he's containing the virus and doing his part as president. Mike Pompeo got up there and was like, "Hey, this is the Chinese virus. It came from over there." And I got the vibe after listening to the news conference. This is a battle between China and the U.S. Because during that news conference, Trump said something to the effect, "We shouldn't be dependent on other countries." And America is dependent on China. And I didn't realize how much America was dependent on China until I found out that China produces 80% of America's medicine. What kind of shit is that? I mean, damn. Let's hop into this article. But if China did this shit though, man, if China really sent these folks over here to spread that virus, that shit was unthinkable. I thought China would fucking try to hit the power grid or some shit before that, but this is worse than hitting the power grid shit. The US and China are engaged in a war of words amid suggestions Beijing could cut the supply of medicine in response to the Trump administration's description of COVID-19 as the Wuhan virus. While health experts in the US and elsewhere have stressed the global nature of the pandemic and sought to avoid blaming China, where the first coronavirus case was detected, some in the Trump administration have pointed accusatory fingers. Of course, China don't want to be labeled as that because it's bad for their business, but shit. How long have Chinese and Asians, period, been avoiding spending money at black businesses or not spending money at black businesses? I saw this news clip where it said had this Asian person saying that Chinese businesses are empty because of this coronavirus propaganda, and it's like, hey, people supposed to feel sorry for you. You don't patronize black businesses, and you're upset because after this virus came out, when it came out from China, people aren't trying to shop at your restaurants. That's racist. Nah, fuck out of here, man. Let me see. Officials such as Secretary of State Mike Pompeo have taken to referring to the disease as the Wuhan coronavirus. I told you, in reference to the city in Hubei province where the first case were concentrated. Donald Trump's national security advisor, Robert O'Brien, was even more barded. Rather than using best practices, this outbreak in Wuhan was covered up, he said, speaking at the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank in Washington, D.C. There's lots of open source reporting from China that the doctors involved were either silenced or put in isolation, or that sort of thing, so that the word of this virus could not get out. It probably cost the world community 2 months. Man, shit. I'm telling you something, man. If China did this shit intentionally, it's gonna be a big problem. On the flip side, this could just be a dry run. The government can just be trying to see how they can control millions of people in certain regions. I mean, but when you got a population of 300 million people that you know of, we don't really know the real number because you don't know who's in this country. But when you got a population of 300 million people, it's hard to fucking control that. I mean, and that's what you know of, 300 million. And this is something, it's like a fire drill. You remember those fire drills and shit? It's a test run to see if you have to control shit if you can. And I really believe the government knows that it's impossible to control 300 million people that are, free and have freedom. You just can't. So they're going to try it out and see how it works. But, yeah, man, if China did this, this goes to show you that America needs to be more independent. I mean, when you're dependent on a foreign country to produce 80% of your medication, you are not a self-reliant country. And it's crazy because, I mean, up until like the 60s and 70s, America was producing and manufacturing every fucking thing. Why can't we go back to that? Because these rich ass corporations, they just don't want to give motherfuckers a living wage. They rather compromise America's national security than pay Americans a living, affordable wage. Even though fucking these corporations got hand over fist type of money, they rather get China to produce 80% of America's medicine. It's certain things you got to produce on your own if you don't expect to be compromised. I mean, all of America's manufacturing, most of it's outside. Most of America's oils comes from outside. It's just like, at what point do you go back to manufacturing your own shit? At what point do you go back to, educating your population to the point to where they can be self-sufficient and produce most of the things you need? And you also got to tackle this issue with cheap labor in America. America just loves cheap labor to the point to where it will cut its nose to spite its face, or whatever you say it. I mean, cheap labor, you see how it has literally transformed the geography or the demographics of America. And these corporations continue to push to just open the borders. This is what happens, man. Like, when you don't have regulations and checks on these corporations, these greedy motherfuckers, they have you in situations like this. If those corporate owners would have invested in like American citizens who have degrees or are going for degrees in engineering, STEM, and shit like that, if those individual Americans were invested in back then, when they were in, college and high school, you would have enough qualified engineers, doctors, scientists to get the job done. But America practices selectively educating small numbers of people because America doesn't want an educated population. It fears an educated population. So the U.S. only educates a small, when I say educate, I'm talking about advanced to the point to where you don't got to outsource like that. America does not want to fucking, for example, like every year, China produces like, I think, damn near 800,000 engineers, or damn near a million engineers a year. America's only producing 300,000 engineers a year. It's like, why don't these corporations invest in producing more American-born engineers because they don't want to pay. They rather go and get a fucking engineer from India, Southeast Asia somewhere, pay them fucking peanuts and do it that way than investing in an American who has STEM capabilities, but maybe needs a push through college or some shit like that. Hey man, this is showing you, dude. Let me get back into this. China has said it is helping the international community. UN Ambassador Zhang Jun told reporters in New York it had provided medical supplies to nations such as South Korea, Japan, and Italy. Okay, we are sending medical teams to countries that need that. And we will do whatever to join the international community to fight this virus because we have only one world. We need to join hands. We need to show solidarity, he said. Republican Senator Marco Rubio highlighted apparent threats from Beijing to cut off supplies of medicine to the U.S. amid anger by some to blame China for not acting quickly enough. I don't know what the hell that picture is. It's crazy because, like, after this shit came out, they tried to show you all those black actors and black athletes that caught this shit, and they immediately try to point it to a black fucking coronavirus. Fuck out of here. This shit came out of China, man. All right, where was I? Speaking to Fox News, he pointed to an article, the state-run media agency, which noted Mr. Trump had praised the efforts of Chinese president to confront the illness. Nah, man, there's some shit going on between the two. You can tell. If China retaliates against the U.S. at this time, in addition to announcing a travel ban on the United States, it will also announce strategic control over medical products and ban exports to the United States. Then the United States will be caught in the ocean of new coronavirus, the article said. Also, according to the U.S. CDC officials, most of the drugs in the United States are imported. I'm gonna read this shit again, just so you can understand. We're not as Americans, we are not as independent as you thought. Also, according to the U.S. CDC officials, most of the drugs in the United States are imported. If China banned exports, the United States will fall into the hell of a new coronavirus phenomena epidemic. It added, we should say righteously that the U.S. owes China an apology. The world owes China a thank you. Marco Rubio said that had been wrong to allow its own medicine manufacturing capabilities to move ashore. Of course. But you can't tell these fucking corporations nothing. They think they know it all, motherfuckers. China can threaten to cut us off from our pharmaceutical supplies. They could trigger a domestic problem here that would make it difficult or us to confront them, he said. It's a tremendous amount of leverage. Of course. Don't forget, China, 60 years ago, China was a fucking shithole. Health professionals who depend on China for access to the country have publicly praised Beijing for its response. On Capitol Hill, Robert Redfield, director of CDC, said this week, they really have now got control of their outbreak. Shit. Let me get comfortable real quick. Hold on. Fuck. Alright. Shit. Okay. Meanwhile, the State Department has summoned the Chinese ambassador after a spokesperson with China's Foreign Ministry suggested the U.S. military might have bought coronavirus. More propaganda. Alright, man, this shit is crazy. It's crazy. They got shit shut down. Motherfuckers is losing their mind. I'm sitting here on my patio, about to go up on my deck up top and chill. But yeah, man. China and the U.S. going at it. But they're not being totally honest with you. They're not going to just come out and say, hey, we're going at it with China over this shit. Nah. They're going to tiptoe around. Now that dude Mike Pompeo, he just wants war with Iran. He's just a hothead. He's blatantly calling out China for it. So yeah, they got New Jersey shut down. Motherfuckers is following those guidelines. They got folks over in D.C. shut down. Chicago, Detroit, heard over there in LA, shit shutting down. Yeah, man. So I'm just gonna pretty much hop on my treadmill, spend this time on my treadmill, working out even more, lifting weights while I'm in for it. I'm gonna be. I mean, you can technically go out and do shit, but they said they gonna fucking like shut shit down even more later. So we'll see. I gotta go.